Okay, so have you ever, like, been in a fighting game and you keep getting beaten by the same move? And you're like, come on, I know this is coming.
Right.
But you still fall for it, like, every time.
It's like your brain's not working.
Yeah, it's like your brain is betraying you.
It's a lot more common than you might think.
Really?
It might have more to do with how our brains are wired than, like, your execution in the game.
Okay, so get ready to dive into the psychology of getting beaten by the same move repeatedly. We're taking a look at a research article that analyzes Street Fighter Third Strike,
Okay.
specifically a move by the character Necro called the LP Tornado Hook.
Okay.
So this isn't just some niche fighting game trivia.
Right.
This deep dive is going to uncover how our brains work under pressure in the game, and maybe even in everyday life.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene. You're up against Necro.
Okay.
He throws this LP Tornado Hook. It's not a flashy move by any stretch.
No.
The study found that even though players should be able to counter it,
Right.
they fall into a pattern. They get stuck.
Yeah.
They get stuck.
And it's interesting because on paper, the move is advantageous for Necro when blocked.
Okay.
So it's like he's setting a trap and the opponent is willingly walking into it again and again.
It's like their brain is saying, yeah, this is fine,
Right.
while they're getting their virtual butts kicked.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's not that they don't, like, understand the game, you know?
Right.
The researchers observed thousands of matches, and they saw two key behaviors.
Okay.
The first was that opponents would try to counterattack immediately after blocking the first LP Tornado Hook, which actually gives Necro that continued advantage.
Okay.
And the second behavior, well, if players did manage to block a few LP Tornado Hooks in a row, that's when they get predictable.
So they adapt to the initial pattern.
Yeah.
I think they've got Necro figured out, and bam.
Exactly.
Third LP Tornado Hook nails them.
They're like, oh, I got it. Wait, no.
But why? Why fall for the same trick, especially when it seems so obvious in hindsight?
Well, it all comes down to how our brains are wired, right?
Okay.
The researchers connect these patterns to cognitive biases and heuristics,
Okay.
which are essentially mental shortcuts that our brains use, especially when, under pressure.
Okay, break that down for me a little bit. These shortcuts sound helpful sometimes.
Right. So think about it this way. Our ancient ancestors, right? They didn't have time to overthink every little thing when a saber-toothed tiger was on their tail.
Right.
They relied on instinct and mental shortcuts, these heuristics, to survive. And these heuristics were essential back then.
Right.
But in a fighting game or even a tense meeting at work,
Yeah.
they can lead to these predictable patterns we're talking about.
So in this case, they see that LD Tornado Hook once, twice,
Right.
and their brains jump ahead, assuming a change is coming.
Exactly.
So they're focused on that expectation and miss what's actually happening.
They're so busy looking for the complex pattern
Right.
that they miss the obvious simple solution.
No.
The study actually found that players fell for that LP Tornado Hook a staggering 67% of the time after successfully blocking it twice in a row.
67%. That's
What?
wild.
So it's not just like bad luck or a lack of skill. It's their own brains working against them.
Yeah.
Looking for a pattern where there isn't one.
Precisely.
Wow.
And this isn't just limited to fighting games.
Right.
These cognitive biases, they pop up everywhere in life.
Oh, yeah.
From our investment decisions to how we judge risks. This research just gives us a really fascinating window into those processes through the lens of Street Fighter. It's like, it's a great example of how powerful that drive for pattern recognition is in us as humans, right?
Yeah.
We're wired to seek out patterns to make sense of the world.
Right.
And sometimes that very drive can lead us astray.
So how do we break out of that loop? Are we doomed to repeat these patterns just because our brains are like hardwired this way? Not at all. Awareness is the first step, right?
Okay.
Now that you know about these biases, you can start to recognize them,
Okay.
both in yourself and your opponents.
Right.
Whether you're playing Street Fighter or, navigating a tricky negotiation at work.
So it's about like stepping back and saying,
Exactly.
okay, is this really the pattern or am I just falling for a mental shortcut here?
Exactly. And the study also found that more experienced players were faster to adapt and break free from this specific LP Tornado Hook trap.
So experience actually helps you like outsmart your own brain.
In a way, yes. The more you encounter these patterns,
Right.
the better you become at recognizing them and reacting to them effectively.
That makes sense. Okay, we've talked about how our brains create these patterns, but what about the opponent in all of this? The study mentioned something about Necro's character itself, like influencing player behavior.
Absolutely. It's not just about the move itself.
Right.
You see, Necro isn't a very common character in high-level Street Fighter play.
So most opponents wouldn't have as much practice against him.
Exactly. And because of that, they have these kind of preconceived notions about how a Necro player will behave.
Okay.
They see this character with these unusual moves, and they anticipate complexity.
Right.
Just based on how he looks and how his moves appear.
So they don't expect him to just, like, keep using the same attack.
Right.
Even if it's working.
Precisely. They might underestimate him, assuming a more complex strategy is at play.
Right.
Which makes them vulnerable to a simple, repetitive tactic.
It's like judging a book by its cover.
Yeah.
But in the world of fighting games.
Right.
So psychology plays a huge role, even in a game that's like seemingly all about reflexes and combos.
Absolutely. This study highlights that even at the highest levels of competitive play, where technical skills are honed over thousands of hours, these mental biases can still creep in.
Wow.
And influence decision-making.
It adds a whole other level to the game.
It really does. And this concept of expectation violation can actually be used to your advantage.
Wait, so you can use these cognitive biases against other players?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Think of it like this. If you know your opponent is expecting you to make a certain move, you can surprise them by doing something completely unexpected.
Okay.
You break the pattern. Disrupting their predictions.
Okay, so it's like a Jedi mind trick.
Right, exactly.
You're messing with their perception of what's about to happen.
Exactly. And that element of surprise can give you the upper hand, whether you're playing Street Fighter or, making a strategic decision in a business meeting.
Wow, I'm starting to see these cognitive biases everywhere now.
Right.
It's like a hidden layer of decision-making that we don't even realize is happening.
It really is.
Yeah.
And once you start to understand these biases, you can make more informed decisions.
Right.
And even leverage them to your advantage.
So we've gone from this one move in Street Fighter to, like, basically hacking the human brain.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
We've seen how these seemingly small, predictable patterns in a video game can actually reveal these deep-seated cognitive processes that affect us all.
Yeah, it's like that saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
Except here, it's like the more you know about how your brain works, the more you realize your brain has been playing tricks on you this whole time.
I like that.
Yeah.
And the good news is, this knowledge is empowering.
Okay.
Once you're aware of these biases, you can start to kind of catch yourself when you're falling into those predictable patterns.
Okay, so what are some takeaways listeners can use in their everyday lives besides? Watch out for Necro players, of course.
Right. Well, first, remember that everyone has these biases.
Okay.
It's not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It's just how our brains work.
Right.
Second, practice and experience really do help. The more you expose yourself to different situations and decision-making processes, the better you'll become at recognizing these patterns.
So it's like training your brain to be more adaptable.
Exactly.
More aware of those shortcuts it wants to take.
Exactly. And lastly, don't be afraid to question your own assumptions.
Okay.
If something feels off, if you're noticing yourself reacting in a very predictable way, take a step back and ask yourself, is this really the best course of action? Or am I just falling back on a mental shortcut?
It's like that moment in the fighting game when you realize you keep getting hit by the same move.
Right.
And you need to switch up your strategy.
Precisely. Sometimes the best way to outsmart your opponent, or even your own brain, is to break the pattern, to come at the problem from a new angle.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've uncovered how a single move in a fighting game can reveal so much about psychology, decision-making, and the quirky ways our brains navigate the world.
Yeah, it just goes to show that there's always something new to learn, even from the most unexpected places.
Absolutely. So next time you're playing a game, or even just going about your day, remember, your brain might be trying to pull a fast one on you. Stay curious, stay aware, and keep those mental combos coming.